In the spring of 2012, during senior year at Jefferson High, Emily sat just 2 rows behind him, Daniel Harper, the boy who never once looked her way. Not once. To him, she was invisible, quiet, average. But 5 years later, everything flipped. She would be the only one who could save his life, and he wouldn't even recognize her. At the high school graduation party, he laughed with his friends while she stood in the shadows, holding back tears. No one knew her name then. But in 2017, when Daniel collapsed on the cold tile floor of a Chicago train station, the face that knelt beside him would haunt him for the rest of his life. This isn't a love story. This is a story about regret, memory, and how time brings us back to the people we once ignored. Hit like, subscribe, and let's go. Daniel Harper was the kind of guy everyone knew in high school, charming, athletic, with that easy smile that made teachers go soft and classmates follow. In 2012, life in the quiet town of Springfield, Illinois, moved slow. Mornings started with football practice, afternoons were for hallway jokes and glances exchanged between lockers, and weekends meant bonfires by the lake. Daniel lived in that bubble, the captain of the football team, a scholarship practically guaranteed, a future laid out like a straight highway. He never noticed the girl in the gray sweater who sat behind him in homeroom. Never asked why she left early every Tuesday. Never wondered why she always had red eyes. Life was simple then, maybe too simple. But looking back, maybe that was the first sign. The quiet before something no one saw coming. It was a Tuesday in late October, just another ordinary day, when Daniel first noticed something off. He was headed to class, cutting through the side hallway near the science wing, when he saw her. Emily. She wasn't in her usual seat. In fact, she wasn't in class at all. Instead, she stood in the corridor, speaking quietly with Mr. Kent, the school counselor. Her shoulders were tense, her eyes distant, and her hands trembled as she clutched a folded note. Daniel didn't mean to stare, but something about the scene pulled at him. When their eyes briefly met, she looked away instantly like she'd been caught. That same afternoon, she left school early again. No one talked about it. No one asked questions. But for the first time, Daniel felt something strange, a shift, a crack in the glass of his perfect little world. He shook it off. Just a weird moment. But deep down, a quiet thought echoed. Something isn't right. Over the next few weeks, the strange moments multiplied. Emily stopped sitting in her usual spot entirely. Sometimes she didn't show up at all. Other times, Daniel would catch glimpses of her alone in the library, scribbling furiously into a worn black notebook, eyes red, hands jittery. One morning, he found her in the stairwell, clutching her phone with a look that chilled him, like she'd just heard something terrible. She didn't see him watching, but he stood there longer than he meant to, heart ticking oddly in his chest. He told himself it wasn't his business. Still, her silence now felt louder than before. It followed him into dreams, her blank stare, her sudden absences, that folded notes still in his memory. Daniel didn't understand why he cared. He wasn't supposed to, but something about her had changed. And the worst part was, no one else seemed to notice. Like she was slowly disappearing, and only he could see it. It happened just days before winter break. Daniel, restless and curious, took a different route home after practice and spotted her, Emily, walking quickly down Oak Ridge Street, far from her usual path. Something about her pace, her clenched fists, made him follow from a distance. She turned into an old brick building, the town's free clinic, the kind most students never talked about. Through the frost-covered window, he saw her speaking with a man in a white coat. Her expression was raw, exhausted. Then came the shock. As the man handed her a file, Daniel saw the name at the top in bold letters, Harper, L., his own last name, his own father's first initial. Frozen outside, Daniel couldn't breathe. Was this a coincidence? A mistake? Or something buried far deeper in the past than he ever imagined? That night, he lay awake, the image burned into his mind. The girl he never noticed might know something about him he never knew himself. The next morning, Daniel skipped school for the first time in his life. He couldn't shake the name on that file, the clinic, Emily's face. He waited until his father left for work, then dug through the old boxes in the attic, dust-covered memories sealed away for years. In the bottom of a cracked cardboard box, under photos and football trophies, he found it, a hospital discharge paper dated April 1997. Patient, Laura Harper, Emily's mother. The file confirmed it. His father had once been listed as the emergency contact. Daniel stared at the paper, hands trembling. That wasn't just a random connection. This was family. Somehow, some way they were tied. He felt sick, angry, betrayed. His father had never mentioned her, never spoke a word about any of it. And Emily, she'd known. For how long? Why didn't she say anything? The girl he ignored for years might be carrying a truth his family had buried. And now, he couldn't pretend it didn't matter. 2 days before Christmas, Daniel confronted his father. He held the hospital file in his hands like a weapon. But the moment he spoke Emily's name, his father's face went pale, silent. Then came the truth, rough, incomplete, and buried in shame. Years ago, during a time no one talks about, Daniel's father had an affair. Laura Harper had been young, scared, alone. Emily was born, and everything was hidden. Paid off. Erased. Daniel felt like the floor dropped out beneath him. His life, his family, it was all a half-truth. But it wasn't just about betrayal anymore. That same night, Daniel received a text from an unknown number. Stay away from her. You don't know what you're starting. His hands went cold. Someone knew he was digging. Someone didn't want the past exposed. And Emily, she might be in danger. He realized then, this wasn't about guilt or curiosity anymore. This was about protecting someone who should have never been left alone. On New Year's Eve, as fireworks lit the sky, Daniel raced to the clinic. Emily hadn't answered his calls in days. The building was dark, closed early for the holiday, but her bike was chained out front. Something was wrong. He forced the back door open and called her name into the silence. Then he saw it. Her notebook, torn open on the floor, pages ripped, scribbles turned frantic. And beside it, her phone, cracked and buzzing with missed calls. Panic gripped his chest. Whoever sent that warning, they'd followed through. For a moment, he thought he was too late. But then, a whisper, soft, broken, from the shadows. Emily. She was there, bruised, shaking, terrified. Someone had threatened her, told her to stay silent or face the consequences. She had tried to leave town that night. Daniel helped her stand, held her close, heart pounding. Everything felt shattered. But as he looked into her eyes, for the first time, he truly saw her. And he knew, this wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something they'd face together. In the days that followed, Daniel became someone new. Not the boy who once lived for the cheers of a crowd, but a man fueled by truth. He helped Emily file a report, stood by her as she gave a statement to police, and handed over every piece of evidence they'd found. His father's papers, the threatening messages, the clinic's logs. What neither of them expected was the second voice to come forward, Mr. Kent, the school counselor. He had known the truth for years but stayed silent, fearing backlash. Now, he couldn't carry it anymore. With his testimony, the entire cover-up unraveled. Daniel's father lost his position on the city council, and others who'd played a role in silencing Laura Harper's story were exposed. For the first time, Emily was no longer invisible. Her story was seen, heard, believed. And Daniel, he didn't just find answers. He found purpose, redemption. The weight lifted, and in the quiet that followed, there was peace. Finally, a year later, Daniel stood outside the community center where Emily now worked, helping teens no one else seemed to notice. The town had changed in quiet ways. Whispers of the past turned into open conversations. People listened more, looked closer. Daniel no longer lived in the shadow of a family name. He'd built something of his own. Not perfect, but real. He and Emily weren't a couple in the traditional sense, but they shared something deeper, truth, survival, and a bond no silence could erase. Sometimes he still thought about that hallway in high school, how blind he'd been, and how many others he might have missed. What if we all looked twice at the people we once ignored? What might we find? If this story moved you, share it. Leave a comment. Tell us who you once overlooked. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay with us for stories that matter.